In pathogen group number 7, we're going to start with a familiar bacterium, Staphylococcus aureus. Staphylococcus aureus, you've worked with it in a lab, and it's usually non-pathogenic, but there are some pathogenic strains, and also the problem is it can infect places where it's not supposed to be, and then can cause a problem. So, as you know, Staphylococcus aureus, that's a gram-positive coccus. It grows in grape-like clusters, like you can see here, these little clusters of staph. Everyone has staph on the skin or in the upper respiratory tract. It's totally normal, and but it can cause infections if you have some sort of other inflammation, or if you have some injury, then it can cause some real problems. It can, a lot of times, the infections that it can cause are pus forming, so recruiting a lot of neutrophils, and then you also can form abscesses that are under the skin, so where the pus then can't drain out. Here you have a case where the staph has infected the skin. That's called impetigo here, caused by staph in this case. And you can see on the skin of this little kid all the infected portions, highly contagious, and you can see all the inflammatory process going on here on the skin. Staph is notorious for releasing toxins, and here are some examples: enterotoxin, also toxic shock syndrome toxin. Toxic shock syndrome is body-wide, and it's associated with a sudden drop in blood pressure that is can be quite dangerous. Also, there's an exfoliative toxin. You'll see that on the next slide. Hemolysins, coagulases. So there's quite a few toxins that can be released from staph. Here would be staph on the skin, causing infection. And then here is this baby with scalded skin syndrome, where you have this exfoliative toxin that is literally peeling off the skin from this baby. I'm sure this is not does not feel good. Here will be pus that contains Staphylococcus. You can see here the gram-positive clusters of cocci on this gram stain. And then here you have staph in the cerebrospinal fluid from a person that has staph meningitis. So here again, these clusters of gram-positive cocci. And here would be somebody that has a staph pneumonia, and in the sputum from this person, you also, again, you have these clusters of gram-positive cocci. You can confirm that you actually have the growth of Staphylococcus aureus by using a differential agar, MSA agar, so that's mannitol salt agar, and you can see here is growth actually, and that would confirm that you are having Staphylococcus aureus, because it can grow on this, it can metabolize or ferment mannitol, and it changes the medium from red to yellow, and that would be confirming that you're actually dealing with Staph aureus. Staph aureus can also cause food poisoning. Here you have an example. Somebody's making this custard pie filling, and this enterotoxin is heat stable. It's an exotoxin, and it can actually then here it goes into the pie custard that this person is preparing, and then you have people that are eating the pie, and then about here it says about 60 people are attending, eating the dessert at 5 p.m., a 3-hour incubation time, and these people are going to come down with nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. In this case, you have 45 people out of 60 people that ate the pie got sick. So then you just have to trace it back. You know that they all ate something at that buffet, and then you just have to find the actual culprit and tie it back to the custard filling. Okay, moving on to the next pathogen, that would be Streptococcus pyogenes. Strepto means in chains, coccus still a coccus, so we are dealing here with gram-positive cocci in twisting chains. And you have some examples right here. You can see the twisting chains. Here's another diagram. Strep is kind of similar to staph infection. Almost any part of the body can be infected, and it's the most common cause of infant bacteremia, so meaning bacteria in the blood, and infant meningitis. You can confirm the growth of Streptococcus by growing them on blood agar. So you have here this red background. This is all blood agar, and then here's the growth of the bacteria. I'm going to outline this right here, and then you see the zone of clearing. That's called beta hemolysis. When you see the zone of clearing, that confirms the beta hemolysis is a typical sign of Streptococcus pyogenes. Here, somebody has Streptococcus pyogenes impetigo. You can see similar outline what we have with the staph impetigo, but it's a skin infection, and it's very contagious. Here, somebody with strep throat. Here will be Streptococcus pyogenes throat infection. I'm sure that does not feel good if you have your throat inflamed like this. And here will be more Streptococcus in the throat. You can see the pus formation right here. That would hurt. This is very inflamed. A lot of pus here. Okay. Here's Streptococcus pyogenes meningitis. So you have the Streptococci. Yeah, these gram-positive but coccian chains. You have them as a meningitis in the cerebrospinal fluid, CSF, cerebrospinal fluid. And here, somebody in the pus of an eye infection. You also have the Streptococci, the coccian chains. And here's peritonitis. There again, the gram-positive coccian chains, so caused by Streptococcus pyogenes. And here more. Scarlet fever is also caused by Streptococcus pyogenes. And there you have, so these kids have a very high fever. And in addition to the infection, this particular strain of Streptococcus pyogenes releases an erythrogenic toxin that then causes the redness and this rash that you see on this kid's skin. So very typical here of scarlet fever, this rash, this erythrogenic toxin, and erythro, you know, that means redness in Greek, or red, the color red. So here, this kid, the typical signs are very high fever and then this reddening of the skin. And here's more. This picture here shows you the strawberry tongue that a lot of people have when they have scarlet fever. It really looks like a strawberry, the tongue that is. That's a very typical symptom here of scarlet fever. So a lot of times I put this on your pathogen test and say, I will give you a case study and say, oh, there's this person with a high fever and has a strawberry tongue, and that should give you a big clue that we're talking here about Streptococcus pyogenes. A strep infection can also cause rheumatic fever, which would be an autoimmune response to the strep infection. And the way this works is shown here, where you're starting out with the strep throat. So you have a strep infection in the throat. It causes your immune system to activate B cells, which make antibodies. If those antibodies then attack the heart, that would lead to something called rheumatic fever, and it can cause heart failure due to the heart valves not working properly. If these antibodies attack the kidneys, then you would end up with acute glomerulonephritis. In this case, the antibody-antigen complex is filtered in the kidneys, and also we can end up with arthritis. In this case, the antibody-antigen complexes, they will collect in the joints. Our next pathogen is Streptococcus pneumoniae. Often referred to as the pneumococcus. It causes pneumococcal pneumonia. It's a gram-positive diplococcus, so you have here the two cocci together, so a diplococcus or diplococci in the plural. The virulent strains, the ones that cause most of the problems or more of a problem, they have capsules, and a lot of times you have this, it's not particularly round, but you have this lancet shape in this particular Diplococcus. Streptococcus pneumoniae is a leading cause of death for all ages. It produces the worst results and the worst cases, though, in children, in older people, and anybody that's immunocompromised. It does peak in the winter time, and here's some more numbers. It's the most common cause of pneumonia, so lung infection, with about 500,000 cases per year. Septicemia, 50,000 cases a year, meningitis about 3,000 cases a year, and otitis media, so that will be middle ear infection, or ear infection commonly called, 7 million cases. About 2/3 of all ear infections are thought to be caused by Streptococcus pneumoniae. Now, let's talk about vaccines. There are 2 vaccines available. The current recommendation is what I put over here in red. So the CDC recommends for children the new PCV13 vaccine. That's over here, right here. So this one right here. And that one, the PCV stands for pneumococcal conjugate vaccine. That, again, is the recommendation for children 2 years or younger. They should be getting this vaccine. And for adults, the new vaccine is called PPSV23. PPSV stands for pneumococcal polysaccharide vaccine. And again, this one is mostly recommended for adults. Here is somebody with Streptococcus pneumoniae in the sputum. You see the Diplococci right here. And here will be in the cerebrospinal fluid of somebody that has meningitis from Streptococcus pneumoniae. And again, you can see the Diplococci right here. Okay, moving on to Enterococci. In particular, we have 2 here, the Enterococcus faecalis and Enterococcus faecium. These are major nosocomial pathogens, means hospital-acquired pathogens, so people are immunocompromised, they're sick, and then they're getting this additional infection with these enterococci in the hospital. And it's mostly at surgical incisions or as a urinary tract infections most of the time as a result of the use of catheters. You may also end up with them in the blood. The enterococci, they are part of your normal intestinal microbiota. Usually it used to be called flora. Nowadays people call it the microbiota. A lot of times these enterococci are highly drug resistant. For example, the VRE, the vancomycin resistant enterococcus, that is hospital feared because it is so drug resistant and so difficult to treat. Moving on to E. coli. That bacterium, you've worked with it in a lab. You know it's a gram-negative bacillus, kind of a short rod. It's a normal inhabitant of our microbiota in the human and also in animal colon, so the large intestine. But it can, if it gets into the wrong place in your body, it can also cause infections, and so it is considered the #1 cause of urinary tract infections, also the #1 cause of infant diarrhea, and the #1 cause of traveler's diarrhea. Can virtually infect any part of your body. As I said, it's part of your normal microbiota, but if it gets in the wrong place, it can cause infections. And here's a gram-stained urine sediment where you can see the E. coli, the gram-negative rods. Now, a particularly bad strain of E. coli is this one right here, O157H7. In this particular case, that can cause bloody diarrhea. It got the name here, the O157H7. The O is the cell wall antigen, and then the H is a flagella antigen that causes an immune response. And depending on the type of toxins that it can produce, it causes the disease. The newest system of naming is based on the virulence factors. For example, if you have enterotoxic E. coli, then you're indicating that the toxin causes diarrhea, or enterohemorrhagic E. coli, such as the O157H7 strain. There you have a Shiga toxin that causes bleeding of the intestine and sometimes even the kidneys. So here are some more information about E. coli O157H7. It produces this Shiga toxin that can potentially be fatal. Occasionally you hear about outbreaks. They had a couple of outbreaks in recent years, and it was tied to lettuce. You might wonder how you get E. coli in the lettuce, but what happens usually is that on farms where they have animals, cattle usually, they also grow sometimes lettuce in some other place, but they will wash the lettuce, and then if it so happened that cattle feces was in the wash water, then it could be ending up in the lettuce, and that's particularly bad because most of us, we don't cook our lettuce when we're eating it. Now, in ground beef, if you have it in ground beef, as long as you're cooking your beef, then you'll be fine. But if you happen to not cook it, that will be a problem. So this particular strain, E. coli O157H7, it produces hemorrhagic colitis, or bloody diarrhea that can be potentially fatal. Can also infect your kidneys, produce bloody urine. Worst case scenario, end up with seizures, coma, colon perforation, so holes in the colon, liver damage, or cardiomyopathy. On average, about 60 deaths per year in the United States, tied to